Finances and work and real estate is very important, and it definitely takes up a lot of my brain space, but I do have goals. Growing in business and growing a business is bad. I think it just the other things are just as important in a lot of ways. Get around people who are ahead of you and in the race with you. You want people to hold you accountable, but I think accountability is hard to find, but when you can find it, it's very helpful.
This is where the journey of expanding empires in real estate, small business, and life unfolds. Join me for insightful conversations with industry leaders uncovering the strategies from overcoming setbacks to celebrating triumphs in business and life. This podcast is your guide through the roller coaster of entrepreneurial life. Whether you're navigating the challenges of small business or conquering the world of real estate, here is your empire. Welcome to Empire Expanders.
Hey, Empire Expanders. Today we have Anthony Fontana with us. He's the Director of Investments and Acquisitions at Vantage Point Acquisitions. He specializes in multifamily acquisitions and asset management across the Southeast region. He also runs a team that specializes in investors buying properties down there. This team does like 100 sales a year. So if you're looking for investments in that area, you might want to talk to this guy after I'm done talking to this guy. So let's invite Anthony on to talk to us for a little while. And let's find out a little more about him, what he's doing, what he was doing. And we always got to dig into some of those stumbling blocks. Anthony, come on, man.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. How's it going today?
Good. Everything's going well. It's a interesting time in the real estate markets. Excited to jump into it. We were having a good conversation before we went live, so I'm excited to carry that on here.
Yeah, we were talking about the fact that the interest rate's like 6.7, and every time I listen to a podcast about them, it's going to go down next quarter, and the next quarter comes, it's not going to go down because the GDP didn't go down as much as we thought. It did go down, so it's a good sign, but not enough.
As an economy, we're just taking our medicine. I think it's we had a couple of years of free and easy money, and I think right now we're just paying for that a little bit, which is fine. I think it needed to happen at some point, so it's not the end of the world.
But so Anthony's an investor, so there will be some investor talk on this because you guys know I nerd out about investing too. So one of my investor things that I tell people, and he probably tells his clients, is the interest rates are higher. It just means you offer different. Doesn't mean you can't offer on things. Offer on what makes sense. Your number changes. That's it. Man.
100%.
So, totally. You do a lot of things, or you do two things really well. Is that a better way of putting it?
I think so. I hope I do more than two things outside of work. Hopefully I'm a good husband, try to stay in shape. But for the most part, professionally, I'm involved in the multifamily space. And then I do have I'm involved in a single family residential brokerage in a kind of a team lead capacity. Yeah, professionally, my life is multifamily, single family. I live and breathe it. It's all I do all day, every day is look at deals from one way or another.
I love how you brought it outside of work is right away. You're like, hold on, time out. Yes, work is cool, but that's not me. I'm not labeled multifamily guy. My label is not director of investment and acquisitions. That's not me. I'm a husband too.
That's right.
That's something we forget, and I just forgot again, even though it's something I talk about.
Yeah. We're both, not to jump into it too much, but we're both in a group called Go Abundance, and there are pillars, and only one of them has to do with, shout out to your shirt here on the video, but only one of them has to do with finances, and the other, 5 pillars have to do with different things in life. Finances and work and real estate is very important, and it definitely takes up a lot of my brain space, but I do have goals every year around family, friends, relationships, faith. And I think that is healthy when you're on this journey, this entrepreneurial path, it's very good to have outlets to redirect some of this energy into other things. We were both nerding out about scuba diving as well right before this. It's on my one sheet to try to scuba dive every year. And if I didn't think about it that way, I might not make the time for it. Yeah, I think that's important just in general.
We also have to make a bucket list. Half of my bucket list is scuba diving. Scuba dive here. Scuba dive the Blue Hole. Scuba dive the Great Barrier Reef. Be in the water with a great white shark in a cage. Definitely in a cage.
I think I'll pass on that last one, but the other two are
if I'm in a big cage, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I completed one of my bucket list adventures last year, a year and a half ago. which was dive with a great hammerhead shark, like a 14-foot hammerhead shark. That was amazing.
Wow. Where was that?
That was in Bimini.
Okay.
So if you go a certain time of year in Bimini, you can dive with a great. You can actually dive with tiger sharks too. I never did that. Those are scary little guys, not little, scary big guys. But the hammerhead, you will go down. They'll chum the waters, and a whole bunch of nurse sharks will show up because they're sea puppies and they just show up looking for food. And so bull sharks will show up, and then once they see the great hammerhead off in the distance, only a certain time of years, they will get us all ready. We'll get in the water. They have like 5 or 6 divers with us that are professionals. One guy will be in the middle with his chain link suit, right? And he'll have his cage of fish and 50 sea puppies around him trying begging for food. That's keep pushing back and divers around us. And he'll basically hold up the fish, and the shark will come in and he'll bait it and throw the fish over you. So the shark comes right over your head. It's
Yeah, you're more of a thrill seeker than me. That sounds amazing and cool, but that's crazy.
yeah,
I've never heard of anyone doing anything like that. That's awesome, man.
yeah,
I've seen the hammerhead migration, not in person, but it's a bucket list. It's like off the coast of Cabo or something, but yeah, there are like hundreds of hammerheads that migrate from wherever they're going. Someone can look this up, but you can go down underneath them and see like hundreds over your head. It's insane, the photos.
yeah. I think you have to do a liveaboard to do that. We were talking about that, my wife and I, because we want to do that. You just sit on the
Yeah,
bottom and just relax underwater and just watch hundreds of sharks go over your head.
yeah,
I've been in the water with 30 or so reef sharks at one point. That was
that's
fun.
cool.
Yeah, they were like, they don't care about you, but they were all around us because we did a reef shark dive, and then the water got choppy because the storm was coming and must have riled them up because a whole bunch of them showed up.
Yeah,
So
super cool.
I'm a big fan of those, but yeah, bucket lists. Sorry, nerding out about being under the water. So everybody knows we were nerding out before. I just came back from a dive trip. I was diving in Bonaire. He's dove in Bonaire, which is cool. I was there for
Yeah,
7 days, dove for 6, did about 15 dives. Bonaire is a
that's
great place to
serious.
dive.
It is. Highly recommend if you're a diver or a wind sport person. If you're not doing either of those things, there's not a whole lot to do, but it is a good place to go to scuba dive or wind sports. So that's awesome.
Did you do wind go kart racing while you were there?
No,
That was
I didn't know that was a thing either.
it was weird. I did it. Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, it's
We need to hang out, man. You do some cool stuff. I need to go on your vacations.
I guess so. But back to the point Anthony was talking about. That's one of the things that I actually had that on my list of things to do for fun. Because the
Yeah,
hardest thing for me when we started really doing this way of goal setting, I goal set a lot of business stuff all the time, but I did not goal set fun or time for me in my mind. It's easy to set weight goals or workout
hmm,
goals or business goals, but when they're like, hey, I want you to set a goal on making yourself mentally better. And that's not just read 18 books. It might be take time for yourself, meditate, things like that, or
yeah,
make a fun goal. I'm like, what? How do I make a fun goal? What do you have like goals like that, Anthony?
yeah. As a younger kind of married person, I've been married for 3 years. My wife, my relationship is very important to me. We have a lot of goals around spending doing certain things together, going on a certain number of weekend trips. It's very easy when you're 29 years old to have other people make your schedule for you and fill in your calendar. We live in Atlanta. This is like the time of year, time of life when everyone's got a first baby, birthday, weddings, baby showers, and your whole year can be filled with everybody else's plans. At the beginning of the year, we try to set time aside for us to do things that we want to do, and if that means saying unfortunately no to things that trying to make their way onto a calendar, then that's unfortunately what needs to happen. But I don't know, in life there are certain times when there are certain things that, in certain aspects of life where I think being a yes man, being open to doing things, being open to going places, being open to showing up for things is a good thing. And then I think you need to know when it's time to set some time aside for you, because you can say yes to things all the time. And every week there's a meetup or a conference or a coffee you could go to. But at a certain point, how important really is that stuff if you're having to skip dinner with your wife or your family? So I'm in a season of trying to figure that piece out. I've been grinding for sure for really, it seems 7 years ever since I got out of college to get different businesses going. And now it's time to figure out how to have a little bit more balance while still making progress in business every year. So it's a new challenge, but it's a fun one, and to say the least.
Did you figure out that you should be looking at that much earlier than most of us did? I was like almost 40 by the time I was like, wait a second. I should probably say no to some of these things because it just hits your schedule. Oh, we have a wedding next weekend. I can say no to that? Oh, cool. That's interesting. Or
That's
a
right.
networking event that could land you a deal or a partnership, or the next networking event or the next one, and so on and so forth. I don't know how you put it, but years ago somebody said it to me. It's been stuck in my head. Yes equals no. So by saying yes to something, I say no to something else. And you put it perfectly by saying yes to this network event. I'm saying no to dinner with my wife.
That's right. That's right. I think that's why it's so important to have things outside of professional goals in front of you and something that you're tracking, because it's all important. And this isn't to say growing in business and growing a business is bad. I think it just, the other things are just as important in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And not tracking those things or paying attention to those things is something that caused a lot of my heartache and panics and breaks and burnouts, lots of burnouts, because I did
Yeah.
nothing to fill up my cup. I just emptied it. And the next day, show up with an empty cup and just continue to try to work off an empty cup. It's like working on an empty
Yeah.
tank of gas every day for years.
And it makes you a more interesting person in business if you do have other hobbies. Some of my favorite clients and some of my favorite people to spend time with in a business setting are people that do interesting stuff outside of the business world. And we were talking about scuba diving. I have some friends who are avid backcountry skiers and will say no to a lot of different business things to go do that. That it makes them more interesting people, to say the least.
It does. Just what do you do? Nothing against golfers, guys. But this way, most of them, oh, I like to golf. And that's it. Okay, cool. You and everyone else. I would love to golf, by the way. Like I said, not making fun of anyone that golfs out there. I like it. It gets me outside. I'm really bad at it. Just let everybody know. If anyone listening and lives in this area, I live in Westminster, would love to teach me how to golf, I would take you up on it. But right now, I'm
I'll
horrible
take that same
at it. invitation
invitation in Atlanta. If anyone lives in
Okay.
Atlanta, I'd be happy to join you and figure out a good trade, because I need
Yeah.
some help with golf too.
So you take me golf and you teach me golf. I will teach you any of the mindset stuff or real estate stuff I know. Your choice.
Yeah,
You can just pick my brain the whole time I'm there,
perfect.
and then help me find my ball in the woods. That would be great too.
That's great.
So since you were talking about overworked and things like that, let's go back to the beginning, because I know in the beginning it wasn't easy getting started. You weren't just boom, I am now the director of investments because I came out of college. And you know what? I feel like selling 100 houses a year. Let's go. It's done. We were talking earlier, and you talked about doing the thing that we talked to a lot of people about doing, where you're just like, I'm going to do something. It may not pay me for a while, but I'm going to do it anyways. Tell me about that, man.
Yeah. So my background is in accounting, management consulting. I worked for a Big Four accounting firm. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but it's getting
Pain.
out of college.
It means pain.
Yeah,
I
it's a
hear
lot of
big four. I
work.
hear your life. You don't have a life.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, a lot of travel. That was my life in college. People make it sound like that's the goal and whatnot. But walking around campus, I always knew, I read a lot of the books, listened to, someone gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad between sophomore and junior year of college. And that was a light bulb moment. So I was the guy in college walking from my house to different classroom buildings with headphones in my ear, listening to some kind of podcast. If this was out, this would be in my ear. There was a lot of bigger pockets at the time. So anyway, I got into the management consulting space out of college and kind of knew that like real estate was a way build wealth, grow, learn different things, have more options in life just through podcasts, different books. So as soon as I could after college, I was traveling a bunch for work. I figured out how to, with a low down payment loan, buy a condo kind of close to the Brave Stadium in Atlanta. And that was crazy at the time because all my friends were living in a much more expensive part of town. I bought a little condo out in the periphery of the city and brought two friends with me to live there as like a house hack situation. So my mortgage or my rent went from 1,500 a month to zero, and my friends were paying a whole lot less too. So it was a good foray into the business. And Jason and I are talking about that's what people refer to as house hacking, or in some ways landlording on training wheels, because you live in the house, you have tenants, but they're your friends. So it's an easy way to get your feet wet. And that sort of pushed me into the residential space. I bought a couple houses between 2017 and 18, both as investments and then pure play or both as house hacks and then pure play investments. I house hacked two other times and brought roommates with me to keep doing that strategy. But there was one situation where I purchased a duplex. This was like my fourth deal, and I still was scraping all of my dollars together every time I was buying a property. And this duplex had tons of issues, ultimately was non-conforming. I had to do all kinds of work to it, ended up losing a ton of money. So it was just like a light bulb moment that if I'm going to keep doing this, I need to surround myself with better people. At the time, I was just working with an agent who didn't specialize in investments. It was just a guy who I found off the street. Again, that light bulb went off, and that sort of set me down the path to go find people who could help me. And I realized how long it was going to take to build up a single family portfolio large enough to do that full time, that I started to look at other ways to get into real estate. And I landed on multifamily. This was around 2018, early 2019. And I remember hearing someone say one time, residential real estate is where you learn, commercial is where you earn. I believe that in a lot of ways. I think it's a really good foray into real estate, kind of buying houses, buying small multifamily, but it's really hard to have, and there's a lot of people that do it, but it's really hard to have a full scale business that pays all of your bills just from single family. A lot of people end up scaling into bigger things, short-term rentals, etc. So to all the way come back to your question, I was just trying to lay the foundation there. When I was looking to get into multifamily, I had a nice, cushy job. There were a lot of options to go work for a large private equity firm or a large player here in Atlanta and be an analyst or something along those lines, because that was my skill set. Analysis, back end financials, underwriting, that was something I excelled in just from my background in school. I set my sights on trying to find people or somebody who was doing that business in more of an entrepreneurial way, where I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can jump into their operation, add value, what have you. And I had tons and tons of conversations with people, coffees, whatever. And I got connected with a guy named Andrew Cushman, who's he had bought 1,500, 1,800 units or so, but mainly as a lone wolf in this space. You can be a general partner and put big deals together without a huge team. It's very common that individuals co-GP or work with other people, and you can buy a lot of units through the syndication model without a big kind of in-house team. So I got connected with him, saw an opportunity to add value through being boots on the ground. All of his units and properties were in Georgia and Florida, which is where I live, and he lives in California. So I saw an opportunity to be boots on the ground and also help with the acquisitions and the underwriting side of the business. And then ultimately as asset management, investor relations, grown since then. But yeah, simply at the time I reached out to 50 people, a couple said yes, and ultimately the kind of partnership or the relationship stuck with him. Maybe he saw something in me at the time and gave me a shot. And it was the best learning experience, free education that I could have gotten. And it was really because I had a skill set. I knew what I had to offer, and that was my location, my financial capabilities. And yeah, we've been working together now for 5 years, and we've bought another 1,500 units or so since then.
I like what you did there with the mentor. So there's a lot of people out there, and we've talked about this on the podcast many times. If anybody's listened to the other podcasts about mentors, and Jamie Gruber, who I spoke to a while ago, not on the podcast, I'll get him one day to come on this thing. We'll just have all of GoBundance just peer pressure him onto my podcast eventually. When I was at a conference, I said this. He's like, don't ever ask the mentor, how can I help you? Because now you're putting the onus back on them. And they're like, I don't know. Don't make me think. And they're not being mean about it, but they're like, there's a lot going on. I don't know. You went to him and said, hey, this is what I see. This is what my skill set is. I can help you by ABCD. You didn't put the onus on them and say, where's the help needed? You said, I've analyzed your business. This is what you need. This is what I can help. This is what I can plug in. I love how you did that. How did you figure out how you fit in that puzzle?
Yeah, simply listening to, I think I ultimately heard him on Bigger Pockets in 2016, I think is when he first went on Bigger Pockets. Then he came on a second time in 2018. And I just remember piecing the puzzle together and understanding where you can quickly look on a website where his properties are located and who's on his team based on the website. And it was a little bit of luck that he was ready to grow and bring someone into his world, and it fit my skill set with what he was looking for. I will say, being a little bit of a younger person and talking to people that are 4 or 5 years behind me and are coming out of college and looking to get into this space, one thing I tell people all the time is it's a lot easier to direct. Well, it's easier to direct a body in motion than somebody who's standing still. So if somebody's moving and doing something, even if it's not directly related to what you're asking me for help with or you're asking somebody for help with, it's easier to direct somebody. So I think ultimately he also saw that I was 25 years old, had 5 or 6 rentals, or 24 years old at the time. It, People that are ahead of you look at that and they say, okay, this person's doing something, even though it's not multifamily syndication. I didn't know the difference between different types of Regulation A, 506B, 506C syndications. I didn't know that kind of stuff that I know now, but at least I was moving, and it was a little bit easier, I think, looking back for someone to take a bet on someone who's doing something. So even if, so I hope that kind of hits or resonates with somebody listening potentially.
I like that too. I always tell people, when I'm either helping them or talking about them getting help, it's no one's gonna push you, but they will steer you. Like I pushed for a while.
Same concept. Yeah.
It's exhausting, right? And these guys, these mentors you're looking for, you're at the point where you can mentor someone at this point in time, probably well past that, but can still do it. Like you don't have the time to drag someone along kicking and screaming because they don't want to put the work in. But you can say, hey, awesome doing this, try this and this, which is steering, right? Over to that side. So I love your concept of the ball in motion, because that's going to get them there, and it's going to make it easier for you to help more people too, rather than dragging that one person. You
100%.
glossed over something we talked about beforehand, I believe. When you first started working with this mentor, you weren't getting paid much.
Yeah, so the way that we structured the initial sort of dating phase of working together, it was definitely more of a like an internship capacity, which was unpaid for the most part. Yeah, it was, if you're looking to learn something from somebody, again, not to just drop a lot of one-liners, but I think I heard somebody say recently, it's seek to serve or pay to play. Those are the two ways to get into a lot of different things. And personally, I didn't have tons of money to pay anyone to help get into this business. So I was seeking to serve. And in this instance, there was a period of time where it was simply just, how can I help you? You have a skill set that I'm trying to learn. And ultimately, after a quote free period of helping and adding as much value as possible and not expecting anything in return, we were able to figure out a way for me to leave my previous role in kind of corporate America and jump over onto his team in a full-time capacity. So that was about a year or so to figure that out.
Nice. And drop all the one-liners you want, because those make wonderful shorts for Facebook and YouTube. So just, it makes Mark super happy when you do that. He's laughing and smiling down below. You guys can't see him out in the podcast world. We can see him down below. So he's a one-liner. Yes, easy work for me for my content work. So that's, you're at work. You're working towards the big goal, right? Working for free ain't easy. You don't know whether end of the road is. You don't know if you're ever going to make it. And were there times you're like, why the hell am I doing this? How is it going to make me do this forever? Did you ever have thoughts like that at some point in time come through your head?
No, I think it's helpful to be working towards something that you find so interesting that you would do it for free. I was so infatuated and still am, and still such a student of the game, a student of this industry, that the idea of being a guy who is working on trying to figure out how to put together $150,000 house flip or $150,000 rental to now having the opportunity to work on 10, 15, $50 million transactions really was just, I felt that it was almost like a privilege that I was willing to work on it as long as I had to show that I, was able to provide value worth bringing in as part of the team and part of the, basically finding my way to prove that it was worth bringing me in, essentially.
Nice. Now, is this the time you started the residential sales role too?
Yeah. So this all kind of happened simultaneously. Figuring out how to shift from my job to multifamily full time, I was thinking about ways and strategizing ways to have other income. And was I going to flip houses? Was I going to be a broker? Was I going to buy other short term rentals and have income from that? Like, how was I going to bridge the gap from W-2 to getting our multifamily business to the point where it's paying the bills? And I landed on the residential brokerage space. That was a whole nother story. Like I said, was working with an agent who didn't specialize in investing at all. And so I just saw that there's not a lot of people out there that are residential real estate agents focused on working with investors. So it seemed like a good sort of path to take. I met some guys also from Bigger Pockets named Matt Wood and Mike O'Connor who were on Bigger Pockets, reached out to them in Atlanta, and they had a residential brokerage here that was focused on working with investors. They were like, this space, very different from your typical helping people go buy in the suburbs. We work with clients from California, from New York, wherever, and we help them buy investment properties in Atlanta. So that felt like a good thing to work on and have going in the background to sustain me while we're getting the multifamily space going. Unfortunately, the timing of getting into multifamily wasn't the best because I left my corporate job in October of 2019, and 6 months later, the world shut down. It was very hard to get multifamily deals done for about a year and a half. And so during that time, I had a lot of time to work on my residential uh, brokerage business, and residential real estate took off during COVID. And I just rode that wave and was able to put together a team in that period of time. In 2020, I think I did 50 deals my first year as a residential agent. 2021, 60, 70, 2022 brought on some people, and we've been consistently doing about 75 to 100 deals a year with three of us. And I've leveraged myself out of a lot of it, thankfully, but I am still involved and still work with the agents on the team. And this has been a really busy year in 2024 just because we have some large clients selling big portfolios and not just keep dropping numbers, but we're selling a lot of properties, it's been a good business to have working in the background to allow me some more flexibility and not be so strapped to go and forced to buy multifamily deals, because right now is not an opportune time, in my opinion, to be buying multifamily. Just very similar to 2020. Yeah, I glossed over a lot of things there. I'm happy to touch on any of them, but it's good to have. I think it's nice to have different income sources if you're looking to be patient and grow safely, in my opinion. But there is something to be said for also going all in on something else. So I'm very aware of, and that weighs on me sometimes, that I might be spread too thin in different places, just being vulnerable there.
Yeah, it's only you who can tell when you got too much going on with how many things you get involved in. And a lot of us think it's the more you get involved in, the better you're doing. And then you realize crap involved in too much and I can't handle it. Doesn't sound like you're there. I was there, backing off because I was like, oh, look at all the deals I'm involved in. Look at me go. I'm like, holy crap, I can't handle all this stuff. Whoopsie.
Yeah,
Which, yeah, one of my many mistakes.
totally.
So we talked about a lot of things you're doing well, a lot of things you're involved in. Let's go down one of those dark alleys. Tell me about something during this time. You had a lot going on. Tell me about some stumbling blocks or something that you've hit on this path, this meteoric rise you've been on. I can't say the word, but you all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, when I was getting into the residential single family investing side, I think you're just infatuated by trying to figure out how to put any kind of deal together and put any kind of do any kind of deal to get unit count, be the kind of guy that has 5 or 10 units. It's nice to say that from the beginning. But I glossed over it at the beginning, but there was one situation that almost brought me back to zero after a couple of years, after a year or two of kind of building and growing and buying a couple rentals. But my third or fourth deal was that duplex that I mentioned, and it was bought from a wholesaler who didn't disclose some things that were wrong with the property, and ultimately had it was non-conforming and had to essentially be like reconverted back to a single family for a number of zoning issues. But at the time, being a guy who's not making a ton of money and has money tied up in other places and having a hard money loan on this deal that you think is going to take 3 months, but it's turning out to take 6 or 9 months or 12 months. I don't remember exactly how long it took, but it essentially was my first loss of capital. And it was all the money I put into the deal, I lost. And at the time, it was like, do I get upset? Do I try to figure out how to sue these people? What is the way forward? And for me, it was just the most clear light bulb that the reason that all happened, because every person I talked to that was ahead of me for advice, I didn't talk to them before I did the deal, but I was talking to them for advice along the way. They all would have been able to point out all the problems with that deal before I bought it. And so for me, it was just so clear that reason I screwed up is because I didn't have any of them to help me before I made that decision to buy the deal. So I was just maniacal at that point about growing my network to never make those kind of mistakes again. If ever I had a question about something deal related, something real estate related, I was on a mission to have a big enough network to not feel like I'm going at it alone. So that was where reaching out to Andrew and getting into his sphere and getting into the sphere of the brokers I'm with today at our brokerage. That was the light bulb for me is you need a team, you need mentors, you need people to help you if you're trying to get into something that you don't know very well yet.
I lost money on one project. I actually still own it, so technically I haven't lost it yet. I kept it as a rental. It's cash flowing, but I'll be selling it probably soon. That is a crappy feeling, especially in the middle of the project when you're like, I'm gonna lose money. What do I do? How do I get out of this? Oh my god, what's gonna happen? Am I gonna lose everything? Like your head starts spiraling when that happens. I'm guessing that happened to you too.
Yeah, and it's helpful it stinks to be in that situation no matter what, but it it is less painful if you have the funds or the means to deal with it, or you have a business that's creating cash flow that you can sustain yourself. Not to be too specific, but at the time it was roughly a $25,000 loss, and I was making $70,000 a year. That was well more than all the savings I was going to save for the entire year. So it felt like a giant blow. It felt like the type of thing that how am I ever going to come back from this? But looking back, it's not silly, but it's just the learning lessons were far greater than the actual financial loss. So I think the benefits way outweighed the kind of the challenges at that time.
Yeah. One of the things
Because
somebody told
without
me
that, if everything just kept going great, maybe I would have never thought I needed help. I would have just been cocky and thought I did, everything I touched turned to gold. So I think sometimes having the universe give you a sign to kind of slow down isn't the end of the world.
and it's funny, you never would have been here because you wouldn't have reached out to all the people you reached out to for advice, right?
Totally. Exactly.
You would
I
still
mean, maybe there would have been some other way to get here, but who knows?
Yeah, definitely. You may not have been here. You may have still been flipping houses. Who
Yeah.
knows? That's really cool. One of the things that helped me when I was struggling with that one was several investors that were friends of mine that were much farther ahead of me. They were like, dude, in investing, it's not if you lose money, it's when. Everyone does. At some point in time, they screw up a project. So don't worry about it. Because the other thing you think of is your ego. You're like, oh my God, I'm a bad investor. No one's going to take advice from me. No one's going to want to listen to me. No one's going to want to lend me money anymore because we take private money in. And all those things start going through your head too.
Yeah.
I love how you talk about several times surrounding yourself with the right people, finding a tribe, reaching out to people who are more experienced than you, or just people you need. Wearing Go Abundance, that obviously helped me out a lot. That's one of my tribes. But talk to me more and everybody out there, because finding a tribe is a big thing for me and something I didn't have for a long time. And something I think we entrepreneurs are really bad at. I think that we think this is a solo mission. And if we speak out or ask for help, we feel like we're unworthy and we are not good enough because we're like, we should be able to do this on our own. And that's what's inbred into us somehow as entrepreneurs, or at least that's my concept from what I've seen and from inside of me in the beginning. So talk to me about the importance of being open, because I'm very open with my tribe, and finding this tribe.
100%. I could talk about that for a long time. So I definitely found that after that situation I just talked about, understanding that mentors and tribe and colleagues was very important. Again, similar to how I was at the time reaching out to people to try to learn from. I was also reaching out to try to grow a network. And I landed at a Go Abundance event, but as part of the Go crew. So before I could qualify for the group, there's a way to essentially volunteer at this mastermind for entrepreneurs for free. This was in 2019. Um, and essentially you get to go, you have to serve and be there and clean up and help set up the conference, but you get to be in this room with people who are varying degrees of success, a lot of business success. But I definitely saw at that event that all these people, everyone there was spouting and talking about, hey, this tribe has changed so much for me because I have this accountability now and I have people that I can bounce ideas off of. Again, showing up to that and really seeing the fruits of the relationships that these guys had with each other put me on a journey to try to find that myself. For me, now it's Go Abundance. It took me a couple of years to qualify to get into it, but I'm part of that group, and that's very helpful for me as far as like having accountability in life, both from a business perspective and a personal perspective, but just in general. Not to digress too much about tribes, but I do think in 2024, having people just in your corner, whether it be in this kind of entrepreneurial journey or just in other parts of life, is just something that I think is missing quite a bit for a lot of people. People are very lonely these days. So my wife and I, we're believers. We are very involved in our church, and I have a men's group and a couple small group. I'm just a huge believer in whatever you're trying to work on, wherever you're trying to grow. And I'm always trying to grow my faith. I'm always trying to grow entrepreneurially. It seems like multiple times a week. I had something this morning. I have something tonight. I'm always trying to surround myself with people that are looking out for me in one way or another. And it's very hard to do that unless you're willing to pay for it or you're willing to reciprocate with other people. So I think you need to, I think people, are craving that, and there's a lot of ways to find it, but we've decided to do it through these various groups and channels. And it's just been a huge game changer because during 2020, 2021, a lot of this stuff slowed down a lot. Not as many people are gathering. I felt like I had my head down for 2 years and I just picked it up, and I was in a completely different place than all my college friends. And I didn't have a great network of entrepreneurs or people in the church. And for the last 2 or 3 years, it's just been a huge goal of mine to continue to grow my network in that capacity of having people to reach out to for different things and having real relationships and people that are going to hold me accountable to the things that I say that I want to be held accountable for.
And you said something super important in the middle of that: real relationships. This isn't like you're building things that last for people that you're friends with now. You're not just tossing business cards. Like, boom, you're in my network. Boom, you're in my network. Boom, you're in my network. That's that makes me cringe when I see those guys at networking groups.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's a completely different thing. And like I said, I think you need to be willing to reciprocate. And if you expect someone to show up for you, I think You need to be the guy and the person that shows up for other people. And it's something that I think is a very worthwhile allocation of your time to pour into other people, because you'll eventually, your cup will be filled up way more than it would have been otherwise.
Very well said. We're about 45 minutes in. I gotta start wrapping it before Mark gets mad at me. I'm gonna
No
ask.
worries.
I don't have 5 or 6 questions of doom. I just have one question I ask besides the how we can find you question. I'm gonna ask. Well, oh, he's finished. I was gonna try to ask mid sip just to mess with you. You beat me to it. This podcast and most of what I do is towards the struggling and starting entrepreneur trying to find their way. If you were to speak to this person right now, what is the one piece of advice, the most important piece of advice you would give that person?
And not to beat the drum too much, but I think it's get around people who are ahead of you and in the race with you. I would say my life and my happiness and my just overall well-being through this whole entrepreneurial journey has definitely gotten better and easier after having joined groups and having people in my life that are holding me accountable to things. It's just gets very tiring to set goals for yourself and be the only person who's tracking them or following up on them with you. If you have other people in your life who are looking over your shoulder, whether that be who are looking over your shoulder, it can really be somewhat of a rocket fuel for you individually and in business. So there are ways to do it. You don't have to pay lots of money and become part of some formal group. You just need to be willing to take the time with other people if you expect them to take the time with you. And you can get 3 or 4 people and set up a bi-weekly call and talk about goals and make it formal that you want people to hold you accountable. But I think accountability is hard to find, but when you can find it, it's very helpful.
I do love when my guests' final word just revolves around what my podcast is about. The podcast is Empire Expanders, is surrounding yourself with your Empire Expanders, which is the people that'll make you better and you're going to make them better. So thank you. I did not pay him money for that. So right now we just have a podcast, but just so everybody out there knows, I am working on building things behind the scenes to help you find people to surround yourselves with, to help you become a better version of yourself. We'll get there at some point in time. I can only do so many things at once. Remember, we talked about spreading yourself too thin. So Anthony's going to make sure I don't do that.
I'm going to email you in a month and make sure you're not doing anything else other than what you already are doing.
I will fly up there and find you. I'd rather go down there.
I got you, man.
We can dive with the whale sharks down there. Atlanta lets you dive in the tank.
They do. I've never done it, but that is cool.
Me neither. I think it was too much money last time. But before I get talking for another 20 minutes, because diving, if someone wants to reach out to you, ask you a question, talk to you, say, hey, man, thanks for the advice on the podcast. Loved it. What's the best place to reach out to you and find you?
Yeah, I'm trying to post a little bit more on Twitter/X. So you can find me there. I can give you guys my handle it's Fontana _ Anthony, but I'll put it in the show notes or something. And then also on LinkedIn, I try to post a little bit there too, but mainly Twitter.
All right. So if you want to talk to Anthony, best place is on Twitter. We'll put it down in the show notes when it comes out, so that way you can find him. And for myself, I like Facebook. I'm never going to go away from Facebook. So just look for Jason Regan on Facebook from Massachusetts, or you can go to the Empire Expanders page and find me there. Again, we'll have probably Empire Expanders Facebook group soon and other things for you. But for now, just DM me on Facebook and I'll talk to you. Anthony, you have anything else? Are we good to go?
Good to go, man. I really enjoyed it. I think what you're doing here is super cool. And the whole concept of Empire Expanders is a neat one. And I'm excited to hopefully see where this podcast goes. You guys are super professionally produced. So I love it. It's awesome, man.
Thanks, man. Mark, that was for you. And we appreciate having you on. Everyone out there listening to the podcast, thank you very much for listening. This was Anthony from Atlanta doing so many cool things at 13 years younger than me. You can do the math. Now you know my age. See y'all later.
Thanks for hanging out with me today on Empire Expanders. Don't forget to subscribe and follow my social media channels for more insightful fun. Also, explore the links in the show notes. If you've enjoyed what you heard, giving us a 5-star rating would really help us out and be appreciated. Stay tuned for more on Empire Expanders.